You're listening to Black Music Scene, a show where we explore the incredible journeys, challenges, and triumphs of Black orchestral musicians who've dedicated their lives to the craft, breaking barriers and defining what it means to be a virtuoso. We are here to celebrate and archive the awe-inspiring stories of our living legends in Black classical music. Today, we're joined by a rising star whose music has captivated audiences around the world, 18-year-old pianist and composer Rhyuhn Green. Born and raised in Philadelphia, Rhyuhn has already made waves with his award-winning single Symbiosis, featured on NPR's Tiny Desk and From the Top, as well as performances with the Philadelphia Orchestra and Curtis Institute of Music. A Kovner Fellow at the Juilliard School, Rhyuhn's talents extend beyond classical music. His work fuses jazz, rock, and R&B, showcasing his versatility as a producer and performer. Rhyuhn is stepping into a new chapter with the release of his debut album, Pheonixes, a bold project representing rebirth, resilience, and creative evolution. On this episode, we'll get to know Rhyuhn, hear his music, and explore the inspirations behind Pheonixes. This is Black Music Scene, cultivating community, lifting our voices, and telling our stories.
Hi, my name is Rhyuhn Green. I'm a pianist and composer. I am the son of Rhyuhn Green.
Rhyuhn is joining us remotely today from a recording booth at the Juilliard School. Rhyuhn, thanks so much for being here and joining us for an episode of Black Music Scene. I want to dive right in and ask a question that I typically ask of our guests, a question that grounds us in our beginning. What are some of your earliest musical memories?
Some of the earliest memories that I have are, it's really hard to remember, honestly, because I was so young. From what I gather and from what people have told me, I would sing, and it just flourished, and it became playing on the piano after my mother encouraged me to do it, and she really set me up with my aunt. Her name is Rhyuhn Green, and she's a huge inspiration to the starting of my studies. She played a little bit, but not really. And she taught me the basics. She taught me scales, tiny things. Just maybe she taught me a C scale one day. And then the next day she taught me Ode to Joy. Those little things created a really solid foundation to actually go and then begin lessons. Music just sort of slowly became, it was already there, but it slowly became who I am today.
And when you started those lessons, what were they like? Who did you study with?
That was with Brigitte David. That was actually a small town piano shop down the street from my house. It was called B&M Pianos. And they mostly sold pianos, but they also offered lessons. And so I began taking piano lessons there. And over that time, I sort of worked even harder to craft my stylistic approach.
What was it about the piano that made you fall in love with the instrument? What was it as a young child that kept you coming back to the instrument?
The way that my fingers felt on the keys. I love the way that the mechanics of the piano work. I love the way that it sounds. And it really resonates very closely with who I am. I find that being a pianist has helped me communicate and use my voice, but through my fingers. I find that using my fingers on the piano and it's very tactile. The piano is a very tactile instrument. And by using my fingers, I find that I can communicate very clearly what I'm trying to say.
I'm imagining a young Rhyuhn so excited to touch the piano keys and create sounds in such a curious and innocent way. And I love that image. I'm wondering where all of this was happening. Where did you grow up? Talk to me a little bit about your upbringing and the people you grew up with.
I grew up in Philadelphia. I grew up in West Oak Lane. And I would commute sometimes to my mom's house and my aunt's house. We shared houses with my grandmother at the time, and I would commute to this little piano shop, and I would take my lesson, and I would go back home and practice on kind of like a tiny keyboard. But living with my mom and my aunt created such an interesting dynamic, and I think that it's cultivated who I am. I wouldn't be the same if I was raised by different people. My music would sound completely different. I would be communicating a completely different message. A lot of my music is based off of my experiences and stories that I've gathered over time. I think that living with my mom has created a more well-rounded individual. It has taught me to think from other perspectives and learn different styles of communication. I became very mature at a very young age because I was having to process different things differently, only living with my mom and seeing some of the struggles that she went through as a single mom. I took all of that information and it made me almost grow up faster, which is a double-edged sword. But I find that I think I'm very well-rounded in terms of the way that I communicate and emotional intelligence-wise.
Wow. Yeah, I can definitely identify with that as well. Definitely relate. I've done some reading on children who have to grow up fast. In some situations, they're called parentified child. And I know that, especially in Black single mother households, there are a lot of similar things that we go through. If you're comfortable sharing, what were some of the things that you were processing that you feel in turn led you to be more mature or a more well-rounded person? What were some of the things that you were grappling with in your younger years?
Growing up, sometimes there were the occasional financial struggle. When I would apply to different musical endeavors, my mother would always try her hardest to get me those opportunities. No matter the financial struggle, she would always work tirelessly to get me where I wanted to be. And that was extremely beneficial to me. I have been blessed and had the opportunity to go to many different festivals over the years, some with scholarship help, some without. But my mom has contributed so much to me emotionally, and she's very, very good at networking. She's introduced me to a lot of people. She pushed me to do a festival at Delaware School of Music. And that's actually how and where I met Miss Michelle Can, who later joined faculty at Curtis. And that was instrumental in my training.
Michelle Can, for those who don't know, is a decorated Grammy Award-winning pianist, a brilliant Black woman who is one of the most sought-after pianists of her generation. Let's hone in on her a little bit. Let's talk about Michelle Can. Can you tell me about your relationship with Michelle Can and how that connection came about?
Well, that's a very, very funny story. I was about 8. I entered a piano festival I had poorly prepared for. I played Bach's Minuet in G major, which may be very familiar to some listeners. I played it very, very poorly. I was supposed to play without sheet music, but I played with sheet music because I couldn't get through it, just because I hadn't prepared. And she stopped me midway through the performance, and she was like, "Thank you." And I didn't do well in that competition, but after the whole festival, after I spent some time working with her and seeing her around, she asked me to take lessons with her. And we worked at different pieces, at different levels, ever since the age of 9. We worked together until 2023. And she's taken me to so many places. I made my Carnegie debut under her. Met so many other people whom have influenced my life and the beginning stages of my career. And then later in my studies, I really showed like a strong interest in composition. And composition had always been on my mind because I would just sit at the piano and improvise for hours. I would never write it down though, which is where sort of the lines between improvisation and written music intersect. I began to then raise questions about composition, and she encouraged me to apply for the Marian Anderson Young Artist Program in Philly. And what that does is it offers free lessons and career support to young artists. And I was so glad to be chosen for that. And I continued to sell with Miss Michelle. And on composition, I began working with William Doherty.
One thing I love to ask composers about is the source of their musical inspiration. Talk to us a little bit about your writing process and what it's like for you to compose. And also, where do you go mentally, spiritually, just introspectively when you write? Where does that creativity or inspiration come from?
It comes from day-to-day experiences. It comes from interacting with someone, or they say hello to me and I say hello back. A lot of my music is shaped by the people around me and the experiences and relationships that I have with others. A lot of the time I write when I get an idea. Sometimes I will sit down, okay, I have to have this project done. I need to sit down and do some work on it. But a lot of the time it's just me. When I have an idea, I write it down. Or if I have an idea, I pull out a notepad or staff paper or my phone to voice record. I treat music as a language. I believe that music is how we communicate. Music is how we get what we're trying to say across. Simultaneously, I think that by learning all these other people's languages and musics and cultures, and simultaneously sort of weaving some of the elements of those into my own compositions, I find that you connect with more people. By treating music as a language, you can speak to more people.
There's something about synthesizing different cultures and musics and perspectives that I think is pretty part and parcel of being a Black classical musician or a Black orchestral musician. Can you talk to me a little bit about what it might mean for you to be a practicing Black classical musician and finding your identity, finding your way in that space? Has it been difficult, or has it been quite natural for you to combine musics of different cultures and backgrounds? What has it been like?
It's kind of 50-50. As a Black musician, going to festivals and attending different groups and seminars and sessions, I would find that there aren't too many Black musicians. It's getting better, but there aren't as many Black musicians and composers as there are other groups. And I feel like that has played into my music as well, trying to also communicate that and lift up voices that aren't quite heard in classical music in different styles, such as R&B or jazz, and using those different elements to sort of show people another side of classical music. Almost, here is a different style. This is something you haven't been exposed to as a classical musician, and there are other people from this community that can maybe bring that to the table in the classical community.
What are some of the things that you hope to accomplish or achieve through your music? Like, if you had a mission statement or a purpose or reason for being, what are some things that might come to mind?
Two things, two words: communication, unity. First, communication is what I want to do. I want to communicate my feelings and my emotions and be able to effectively communicate to the people that I'm speaking to. And two, I want those messages to be unifying. I want my music to have a positive impact and bring people together rather than tear them apart, which I feel that in 2025 is most definitely necessary.
So I want to talk about the album, your project. Can you talk to us about it? Give us the name of the project and where the inspiration came from. What has motivated this? Yeah, maybe we can start there.
The name of the album is Pheonixes, and the inspiration for it came from a single moment when I thought about going into 2025 and all the things that I've done in the past and bringing them new, making them current, making them new, making them understandable for other people and who may not be speaking the same language that you are. I think that the term Pheonixes, it it really entails rising from the ashes. It shows that there's always growth. There's always room to be reborn in a sense.
That's amazing. I love the parable of the phoenix. This idea of being reborn through fire. This idea that rebirth isn't something that just comes to you. It's not easy. It's literally being burnt to ashes and coming back into this world, coming back to life. So I'm wondering, can you talk to us a bit about some of the difficulty or challenges of producing this work? And talk to us about some of the pieces that are on it. What do you think, looking back, were some of the challenges or hurdles that you had to get over?
In the beginning of the project, it was, how do I produce an album that details my best work and really embodies the Phoenix? So I have a number of tracks on there. Each of them sort of represent the version of the word Pheonixes in my mind. I have a lot of pieces that are titled after sort of ideas of the Phoenix myth, or the titles of some of the myths of the Phoenix. And I really detailed those works. For example, I have a solo piano work on there. I have a number of solo piano works on there that are, some of them begin very dark, some of them are more uplifting. I also have an electric violin track on there, which I played, and it showcases a lot of hip-hop rhythms, and it really brings together a lot of communities and brings together, and we rise together.
If you could pick one or two pieces that you'd want people to really sit with and reflect and think about something, what pieces come to mind?
I would definitely say the title track, Pheonixes, which is also, it's the second to last track on the album. There is also From Ashes, which is another one of my favorites. That's the solo electric violin track.
What stands out about those pieces for you? What's special about them, in your opinion?
For From Ashes, it's a celebration. It's just fun. It has a lot of hip hop in it. It has a lot of classical music and violin in it. It really combines everything, and it's just fun to listen to, fun to play. It was really a treat to put together. Pheonixes is sort of how I'm getting my message across on the piano and otherwise. I'm really trying to get the listener to understand that it's all about coming together and not focusing on the differences, but focusing on the things that will bring us together as a society, a community, one world.
Yeah. Yes. This album, I'm excited to sit with it, listen to it, get lost in it. And I'm also excited for this internal transformation that I know will happen for me as I'm listening to it. My own internal rebirth, no matter how big or small it might be. And thinking about coming together, thinking about unity, thinking about communication, it makes me think about advocacy work. It makes me think about representing people. And I read that you serve on a board of a nonprofit called Generation Music. I'm wondering if you could talk to us about some of the advocacy work that you do with Generation Music and talk about some of the intentions that you might have as it relates to the community work that you want to be done.
Generation Music was founded in 2018 by Chloe Cooper and Clara Casanova, and their goal was to create more classical musicians in Philadelphia and create classical musicians who also look like them. I stand very firmly with that mission, and I began working with them towards the end of this past summer. It's been a real pleasure, sort of cultivating ideas and strategic plans for this nonprofit, because what we aim to do is create sort of sundry leaders for people to look up to give the kids in Philadelphia someone to look up to and someone to be almost like a mentor, an inspiration to them. A lot of times in Philadelphia, you'll see that there aren't a lot of classical musicians, especially of color, and a lot of the students don't think it can be them, but it can be them. It can be them. So we aim to create those opportunities.
Where do you think the inspiration and motivation to do this kind of work comes from for you? Does it come from specific instances, or do you think of it as just kind of part of who you are? Yeah, where does this stem from?
It's a part of who I am. I think that I am very, very blessed to have the opportunities that I have, and I want other people to have those very same opportunities, and I want people to show the musical community this is where we're at. This is the excellence and the level of power that we bring to the table.
The young musicians that you hope to represent and serve, what's some advice that you would like to share with them? What are some general things that you like to live by or like to keep in mind?
Artists have always been the people in society whom, if you look at history, have inspired change. And I think that we need to be the change that we want to see, which has been said over and over again, but it really, really needs to be internalized that you can be the change that you want to see. And it's very important that you give people your best and always be the highest caliber of artist that you can be.
Rhyuhn Green, the Philadelphia-born pianist and composer. His new album, Pheonixes, is out now. Check it out on all platforms. The Black Music Scene podcast was written and produced by David Norville. The Black Orchestral Network is sponsored by the Gateways Music Festival and generously supported by the Mellon Foundation and the New York State Council on the Arts. The Black Music Scene podcast is a product of the Black Orchestral Network, where our mission is to cultivate community, lift our voices, and tell our stories. If you'd like to get involved and support the Black Orchestral Network, please visit blackorchestralnetwork.org. Thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.